Welcome back, MTG Joe here. We're here for the weekly metagame breakdown for the Pioneer Best of 3, aka formerly Explorer, now on Arena. So what we're going to do is look at the top performing decks. Since the ladder reset, this will kind of be our first look at a lot of the Final Fantasy stuff also flowing through, so we'll see what's happening there. We're going to get the data from Untapped, what you see on the screen. If you want to use Untapped to track your win rates, see decks, the link is in the video description. All these deck lists will be pasted as well. There's currently a little bit of a bug because there's not a lot of data for like the last week since the ladder reset. You see like just mono red. So on the main meta page, there's like a lot of decks kind of parsed through. I pulled out either like the top decks or like that kind of consistently show up on MTGO, as well as some decks featuring some new cards that are doing well in smaller samples. These are all above like 55% win rates, but the samples aren't huge. So it's not going to show the percentage of like win rate percentage on the individual ones, but keep in mind for this video, just getting something out there for folks to see what the meta is like. These are all viable decks with the exception of one, which small sample size, but gives you an idea. And I'll clarify that one once we get to the Boros Hammer deck. So we're just going to jump into it. Mono red is the highest win rate deck. This version here is looking to get off the Sunspine links, interesting enough. Usually these two slots here, the Azorius, are Sunspine links. So opting to go with Azorius Godseeker and Azorius the Fervent instead in this place here. If you've got your standard deck banned like me and you need a deck, it's pretty much stock in Pioneer. You can play Kumanos in place as well as Bonecrusher Giant. Like I said, most of the decks are playing Sunspine links in these two spots here. Azorius better against like some of the black-based removal though. But pretty stock there. You have Forges, Magebane Lizard for any Stormish, Phoenix style decks, Torch, and Red Cap Melee as cheap removal. You may want some Graveyard Hate in here, just trimming on some of these pieces. Ghost Vacuum, Unlicensed Hearse, stuff of that nature. We have Rakdos Sacrifice. So moving away from the Jund combo, and we're actually seeing 4 copies of Sephiroth Fabled Soldier in here. So this is another sack outlet, which plays nicely with things like Mayhem Devil. You could sack your cat for value, get some of those effects there. You can claim the firstborn your opponent's thing and then sacrifice it. If you trigger its ability 4 more times with things dying, it flips and you get kind of a permanent Blood Artist effect. Cat loops can help you achieve that as you kind of push through. But otherwise, it's the steal your stuff. You have Clockwork Percussionist as a way to kind of get some card advantage. Unlucky Witness sometimes sees play here. You have Fatal Push, easy to enable Revolt, Bloodtithe Harvester, and then kind of your Fable package. Extinction Event for mono green if you happen to run into it. It's not that popular, but somehow I always face it when I play mid-range. But just kind of like Angels, stuff of that nature hits them. Withering Torment for hate pieces. Enchantments, stuff it usually can't hit. RC Revenant, just a nice body against the mono red, against control-ish style decks. You have Lilies, go blanks in here just for hand hate, Unlicensed Hearse for graveyard hate, Edict, just catch all kind of removal for planeswalkers and creatures, more Thoughtseize for hand hate, Red Cat Melee for mono red, Duress for cheap hand hate. We then have Dimir Ninjas. So this deck here is looking to kind of play a tempo-oriented deck. Fairy Miscreant, Spyglass Siren, Mockingbird could copy your other effects, Flood Pits Drowner, just a bunch of cheap effects. What these will allow you to do is get some ETB value, then you can pick them up with Moon Circuit Hacker if they're unblocked, or Kaido, and just kind of get that value. There's like a 1000-faced ninja, but not necessarily a lot of ninjas, but kind of the ninjutsu effect. Fairy Miscreant can get you some card draw, plays nice with the Mockingbird. You have Fatal Pushes, go for the throat as cheap removal, hand hate, and then Enduring Curiosity is more card advantage. Mutavault is a ninja for Kaido, so you can make that a very large creature. You have Shelly for kind of the mid-rangey aggro matchups, kind of stabilize, gain you life. Extinction Event is like we mentioned, Graveyard Trespasser, Graveyard Hate, which is nice, and just harder to kill. Usually your opponent has 2 for 1. Annoyance catch-all removal for like smaller things. Exile is also relevant against like Heartfire Hero. Green and red things, Aether Gust, Spell Piece, just cheap disruption, Grafdigger's Cage, anything looking to cast spells from the graveyard or cheat into play. And then Duress, hand hate, cut down is more cheap removal. Azorius Control. So this is a Kahira companion. We see lockdowns, stock ups, kind of newer additions to the deck. We have Beza's Mane, Farewell on the top end, your usual offenders into Teferi and the Wandering Emperor. Some Narsets very good against Phoenix. Then just a bunch of cheap counters, interactions, stuff of that nature to kind of hold you together. You win with like Wandering Emperor, Beza, or your utility lands, Restless Anchorage. You have the Gaia Reach Sanitarium lock with Narset, where you can force your opponent to draw and discard if they're hellbent. They don't never get cards again. Fountain Port is another potential win condition, along with all the Storm Giants. Shark Typhoon for kind of the mirrors, mid-range things. You stick this, kind of make a bunch of sharks or just channel it and get, or cycle it and get that value. Elspeth, just another threat out of the board. Settle for aggressive decks. Bezos for aggressive decks. Knockout Blow good against the red decks. Dispute for cheap counters. Ashiok for graveyard hate or anything looking to kind of search your library. Test the Talents, good against like Lotus. And Control Mirrors, Graveyard Hate and Rest in Peace. And then High Noon for kind of stormy style decks. Selesnya Angels. So this deck here is looking to use your 6 accelerants to play Angels ahead of curve, gain a bunch of life, Righteous Valkyrie, Bishop of Wings, gain your life with Angels, and then you kind of play like the, sorry, my card delivery is here. Give me one sec. Sorry, I had my cards for Legacy just literally came in as I'm recording this, so I just needed to tell my wife to answer it before someone runs off with my cards. We have Jada that makes your other angels bigger. Resplendent Angel, once you gain 5 or more life, kind of spews. So this deck can just outpace with life gain against the aggressive decks, against the mid-range decks. Some of these creatures are just hard to interact with, and they make multiple bodies. You have Kyla's and Collected Company, both to kind of get you ahead in terms of virtual card advantage off the top of your library. Toskia draws you more cards with creatures entering. Redain is like a tax effect for big mana decks. Arkin for like the Storm decks. Rest in Peace for Graveyard High. Dampening Sphere for Nykthos decks or Storm decks or Lotus. Portable Hold, cheap removal. Deafening Silence against any sort of Storm style decks. Mono white tokens. So this deck here is using United Battlefront with kind of a updated standard version of the Caretaker's Talent deck. So Battlefront finds you a whole bunch of cheap permanents. So you can do like Wedding Announcement, Restoration, draw discard, hit you lands, Seal of Existence removal. Well, it can't be hit off Battlefront, but Enduring Innocence and Caretaker's Talent both draw you a bunch of cards. You have Caretaker's Talent to get you ahead in terms of like Rabbits, Ossifications, cheap removal, Authority, Emperor, 1 High Noon in the main, and then just a bunch of utility lines kind of made leveraged off the Sunken Citadel. You have Nykthos as well to generate you a whole bunch. Yorian Companion, then Sweeper with like Day of Judgment. Catilda is just a big life linking body. Voice against the counterspell based decks. You have High Noon for non-creatures. Rest in Peace is Graveyard Hate, and then Heliod's Intervention and Surge. So Heliod's Intervention gains you a bunch of life, but mostly for Artifact Enchantment Hate, good in the mirror, and then Surge protects you against red and black stuff. We have Selesnya Company, so similar to the Angels deck, but this one's more tax oriented. So you have Thalia, Kellen gets you card advantage, Anointed Peacekeeper eats at your opponent's hand, Arkin reduces to 1 spell per turn, Aven Interrupter can counter stuff, Displacer can blink stuff, so you can like blink your Aven Interrupter over and over to lock people out. Enduring Innocence draws you cards, Skyclave is removal along with Werefox Bodyguard, and then you have Coco to pull together the deck. Crazy curve of just like all 3s, but you're relying heavily on turn 1 elf. Mardu Greasefang. So this deck here is looking to put cards into your graveyard through things like Overlord, FOMO, and then basically curate it so you get Parhelion or Sky Sovereign, and then reanimate him with Greasefang and be able to attack right away. Fable could also put cards into your graveyard. Then otherwise you're just kind of a Mardu mid-range deck. Fatal Push for removal, Thoughtseize, Vanishing Verse, all kind of mixed into there. You have Elish Norn for any decks with a lot of ETBs. Nahiri is a way to kind of find your vehicles and give them haste without relying on the graveyard. Similar with Chandra. You have Wear Terror, Artifact Enchantment Hate, Vanishing Verse, cheap removal, Unlicensed Hearst in here. As Graveyard Hate, value with Bankbuster to kind of grind, Containment Priest, anything that's looking to cheat and play creatures. A Braid, Torch, cheap removal, Surge protection against red-black decks, as well as Duress. Kind of Surge protects your Greasefang against a lot of the common removal. All right, Boros Hammer is showing up the percentage for whatever reason. This one it likes. 24 games, 79%. If in your openers, if you have Leyline Axe, comes into play. You're using Cloud here. You have some cutters, so Cloud can find you an equipment. And then if it's equipped, if an ability triggers, it triggers an additional time. You have Raban, Bull of Alamigo, 2 mana, 2/2, ward of paying its life, and then whenever it attacks, you attach one target equipment you control to target attacking creature, so it bypasses some of the equip cost. I have no clue what Kazul's Toll Collector does. So 3 mana, 3/2, attach equipment you control. So it's just a way to kind of circumvent the equip cost, which is nice. So you have Sicarda's Aid, you have Colossal Hammer kind of effect. Fervent Champion reduces the activated cost of equipping. So it's just a bunch of ways to kind of cheat equipment in and kind of go from there. Shadow Sphere as another kind of way to get some life and trample. And then Dragon Blade gives you some hexproof from common removal. Wear Terror for kind of hate pieces, removal. You have Forge for the grindier matchups. Dewdrop Cures, like Reanimate style effects. Sheltered for the red decks. Rest in Peace for graveyard decks. Invasion against any kind of mid-rangey control decks with lots of removal. Portable Hole for the mirror. We have Phoenix with Cutter. So basically the Izzet Phoenix deck, at this point, for those familiar with the format, quite aware, you're looking to put Phoenixes into your graveyard, like milling them over with Picklock Prankster, or just draw discard style effects with the Artist Talent. Cast 3 spells, get it out of the graveyard for free. You use Treasure Cruise to refill your hand, and then this version is using Gory Steel Cutter as another way to make tokens. So you naturally want to play multiple spells. Well, now you get the benefit of making other tokens along with Arc like Phoenix. Brotherhood's End and Anger is sweepers. This can also deal with some common hate pieces. Brazen Borrower, just bounce a lot of common hate pieces as well. Gives you a non-graveyard threat as well. Cheap counters, bounce with like Aether Gust Negate and Spell Pierce. A Braid is removal that can also hit like Ghost Vacuum, Unlicensed Hearse, Dreadmaw, just catch all removal. Or like Tempo, Chandra's Defeat for the red decks, and Annul deals with a lot of the common hate pieces. And then lastly, we have Izzet Lotus Field with Vivi included. So Vivi is now kind of like the win condition. So what you're trying to do here is Lotus Field basically comes into play. There's no stifle effects in this version in here. Also not playing the expedition map to find it, but Lotus Field, sack your lands, and then Thespian Sage can copy it, generates a bunch of mana. Then you use things like Vizier, Tumbling Sands, Hidden Strings, Pour Over the Pages to just kind of tap and tap. You chain through your deck, leveraging Artist's Talent as well. Leer lets you cast stuff from the graveyard, and you kind of go from there. In terms of just casting spells over and over, Vivi can generate mana as well, and you ping your opponent to death there. Stormscale Scion is another kind of payoff in terms of just casting a bunch of spells. If they have like a lot of targeted removal, you can go that way there. Beza's in here for the aggressive decks. You make white mana off Lotus Field. Same with Silence as protecting your combo. Sweepers and Pyro, Spell Pierce, Cheap Disruption, Rending Volley, Blue and White Hate, and then Chandra's Defeat for the red decks. So that's it for the week. Let me know what you've been playing, what you've been liking, and we'll catch you next time. Thanks for watching.